we are back in the regular board meeting.
Okay, great, thank you.
All set, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we are back in session, minus our attorney. Is he on his way? Okay, got it. Okay, as we reconvene into public session, direction of staff at this point is basically, I had it written down here, that no further instruction to legal counsel based on the action for A3 and A4.
Clear.
Okay, thank you. Regular business meeting, public forum. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the July 16th, 2019 regular meeting minutes and the July 16, 2019 executive session minutes. Can I get a motion for approval?
I move.
So, okay, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Financial reports and updates. Finance Director, Gabe Boldrum.
All right, good afternoon. Mr. Chair, members of the board. You have the July financial report in your packet. Starting off with the month of July, you'll see our property tax revenue was a little bit under budget. We received $51,495 for the month of July. That put us about $30,000 under what we projected. But again, on our property tax revenue, that's pretty much a function of timing. Also understand that this revenue that we're collecting right now from property taxes is from previous year's levies, because this year's tax bills haven't gone out yet. So until those tax bills go out, we don't see our significant tax revenue. On the non-levy revenue side, we received $333,000 in non-levy revenues, which was $123,000 over budget. That $123,000 is really broken up between kind of three main things. One is our ambulance revenue for the month was above budget, our wildland revenue, and some sale of surplus items, which is what caused us to have that variance. And then just kind of reiteration to the board on how that works. When we sell surplus items and things like that, we take those monies and earmark them back towards our capital improvement plan. So that goes back and helps fund that process. On the expense side, you'll see personnel expenses were at $1,385,000, which was $82,000 over budget. That variance is due to those wildland deployments and overtime associated with that. Understanding that, again, with that overage comes revenue to cover those costs. So on buildings and land, pretty much right in budget there, $5,600 over budget. Vehicles and equipment were $8,400 under budget. Communications and IT was at $81,646, which was over budget, primarily due to timing on some software purchases. We actually, more specifically, our strategic management software piece that came out for the month of July. And finally, managerial expenses were at $57,377, which was $10,000 under budget for the month. Percentage of expenses, you'll see for the year we've expended 10%, leaving 90% left. Where our money's gone as far as a percentage of overall expenses for the month, personnel was our highest at 86, operations was 12%, and managerial was 2%. Especially early in the fiscal year, when we're not spending money on other projects, we'll see that personnel expense percentage be a higher number. As also our overtime for our wildland deployments, also initially in the first of the year, attribute to that as well. And as we continue through the year, we'll see that number, that percentage come down closer to the lower 80s, which is typically where we're at. Finally, cash position. We ended the month at $7.8 million compared to $6.7 million last year at the same time, and a lot of that is attributed towards our savings for our capital fund, as well as the budget performance we saw over the last year in comparison. So unless there's any other questions, July's pretty much a quiet month on the finance side. We have started audit prep. We're kind of busy getting everything together, closing the books for last fiscal year. So when it comes time for the actual audit, all the financials are ready to give the auditors, so.
Okay, any questions for Gabe? No? Okay, I'll need,
Thanks, Gabe, for your report.
Thank you.
and do we have a motion to approve July 2019's financials?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of approval?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the financials for 2019 July are approved. Next item on the agenda is the fire chief's report. Chief Coyle,
All right, so,
this may be your last report.
yes, sir, I believe it is. Yep. So, yeah. I'm gonna miss you guys.
Don't get choked
I
up.
won't get too choked up yet. We'll get through the numbers first. So, the first part of the chief's report that I want to share with you was the incident summary and response year to date. And as you can tell, looking at the numbers that are the total monthly calls increased significantly during the month of July, and a lot of those calls were backcountry rescue type calls. And we look at some of the amount of calls each station had here. In the next slide, you kind of see where that focus was. I bet you guys can guess. So the response time breakout, as you can see, a couple months ago we started reporting this as kind of stacked column with the call processing, turnout time, and travel time. And the two numbers that we can control are the call processing time and the turnout time. As you can see, those stayed right on par with the month prior. And fortunately, our travel time was down, so it reduced our overall response time, also known as our total reflex time. The incident response by station for last month, Station 5 actually had more calls than Station 4 in their first due, which is aberrant. And on this next graph, I think it kind of shows you a little different. So that made me wonder. I'm like, what's going on here? And how abnormal is that? Because I felt like it was abnormal, but when you look at this graph, the green line is Station 5, and it starts back in August of last year and then goes all the way forward to July of this year. So you can see it's normal for Station 5 calls volume to be busier during the summer months, but it certainly is not normal for Station 5's call volume to be as much busier as it was during these months. And you can see that the village of Oak Creek, there's assisted living facilities out there. It gets to be flu season, tend to have more calls. And then other people have their little spikes, but their trend lines are a lot flatter. So we'll continue to watch that. Not sure what it means. One month it could just be a spike that goes away, or it could be something that's futuring some changes in our response needs. So we'll keep you all posted. Any questions on that? I guess is that useful to see the information displayed that way? Because I messing with different ways to do it, and
I think it is. I think it looks great.
Yeah.
okay.
I would have to agree. From a personal observation, in the Canyon, Station 5's area, for example, that's Coconino County Sheriff's Department jurisdiction with downright dangerous parking on both sides of that highway up and down. I would expect additional calls to occur just for the sheer numbers of people that were there on Slide Rock and then in beyond, almost all the way up past Butterfly, with people walking in traffic, crossing traffic, parked on both sides, and so on. It just seems to me, I know we don't have jurisdiction, it just seems to me something that should be addressed.
Well, I understand that during the board report, during my chief's report, I'm not to get direction from the board. So I'm going to tell you what my intent is, and we'll just let it sit there. But when the chief comes on board, there's different actions with Chief Troutwine gets here. There's different actions already underway between the Park Service, the Forest Service, ADOT, And I think that more actions are necessary. It is a huge concern of mine when we're responding to, you get a call, one of them was a near drowning for an infant. That is going to bias within the decision space that's allowed for that engine operator. That's going to bias him towards going more quickly to that call. That is confounded with the illegal parking and with the people walking the roadways, and it presents a real hazard for those individuals, and it presents the potential for significant consequence for the operator of that vehicle and for the fire district. So I do intend to bring that in, to put that on Chief Troutwine's radar. I have the traffic information back to 1995. I will share that historical view with him as well.
That's interesting.
Well, what I like about it is that the general public has, at a glance, without,
See it.
I mean, they could understand it, or they could see that there's a huge spike, more so than any other station in our district, so.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the traffic, I've read that the construction that's gonna start mid-August is, that part of the plan is to cordon off and no longer allow parking. Now, I don't know if it's the entire stretch near Slide Park, but that's what I read.
And that's correct, Ms. Cooperman. There,
Uh-huh.
they have, and ADOT partnered with us early on in that to make sure that the closure of those parking areas did not limit our response capabilities, and so we have with them on that. There's also some proposed fencing around the north end of Slide Rock that is right now going through the environmental approvals that are necessary. So there's a lot of actions underway. It is also worth noting that, based on the response we've been seeing on our Facebook page, there's also a significant amount of frustration from the public about the traffic and empathy for the responders in that environment. But it is most certainly, it's an issue that's on everybody's radar.
In watching the Facebook page and seeing the post, are the amount of incidents in Slide Rock of people being injured, is that the normal frequency? Seems like it happens pretty often.
I would have to say that based on the abnormal increase in the number of calls that Station 5 is on, and the fact that Slide Rock is the most common response destination, that those numbers are up as well. I don't know if that's a component of extra visitation. I don't know if it's a component of the fact that it's hotter and drier this year, so there may be more algae growth and slippery rocks are even slipperier. I don't know, but it's likely that, I'm almost certain, as a matter of fact, but without having the numbers in front of me, that Slide Rock's calls are up significantly.
And Chief Coyle, in response to also the other graph showing the total reflex breakout, I think that's a great graph as well, because it also shows travel time and how it's affected month by month, and lays down a good case for some remediation.
It certainly does, and I think another component of that for me is it's important for the crews to know, for them to be accountable for what they're responsible for, but not to be accountable for things that are outside of their control. And when we show those times just as one whole number, that may cause, because they're competitive, and they get them broken out by each station on each shift. So we want to make sure that they know what part they own and what part is just part of the environment. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so carrying on the grant activity, we still have 2 outstanding grants we have not received word on. Off to the right, the same information is within your packet regarding the community risk reduction activities during the previous month. And they're working, the CRR is working with Sedona staff for a standardized approach to special events. And actually, I look forward to what Chief Troutwine's perspective is on that when he gets here as well, because he has quite a bit of background in planned events. So I think that would be some good input. Some of the training highlights, I'd say the biggest one there that I want to touch on is the first one, and that's that firefighter Taylor King and firefighter Kyler Tarver have completed their probationary year. Both of those, so Taylor is the last one to come off of probation by a matter of a couple weeks after Kyler. But it also marks the first time, and I can't even tell you how long, that we haven't had a probationary firefighter, which is exciting to me because it means that, some of the attrition that we've experienced in the past, whether it was people that involuntarily separated from service or voluntarily separated from service, has occurred at a less frequent rate recently. And so having those guys off probation and being able to become a fully functioning part of that crew, and both of them did exceptionally well in their probationary tests, is exciting. And I know it was a lot of hard work by them and their crews. All right, we did get a donation for $1,200 from the Ida B. Gibbs Trust. This kind lady had earmarked in her trust when her, I believe it was her children had passed, that there's money to go to us for helping her in her time of need. So, like Gabe had said, that money will go back into the capital, and there's a couple capital purchases that we thought were that were already planned, but that kind of tying that money to it and then letting the family know that we use that money to do this, and this is how it helps other people, would be a nice gesture since they were kind enough to provide that, that funding for us. And I wanted to read this sentence because I think at the end of the day, the comment that was in one of the letters is probably one of the more awesome things that we can do for people. And in a letter that a wife wrote about the service that Cruz provided for her husband, she said, "Because of these men, my husband is alive, and we get to live together a bit longer than our 48 years to date." I thought that was one of the sweeter sentiments that I'd seen, and I just wanted to share it with the board. Okay, so some of the significant events this year. Top picture is the museum fire, and then the bottom picture is the cellar fire. Those are the two Type 1 incidents that occurred since our last board meeting. One on the Prescott National Forest, one on the Coconino National Forest. Fortunately, none of them immediately near us. We did send resources to both of those different incidents. And we actually have individuals out on not tow, which is what I have written there, but on two fires. We have Todd Miranda is on fire in the Pacific Northwest. And then we have a medic team on the Sheridan fire, which is the one near Prescott. And I thought, since there's a little bit of smoke in the air, that I'll also give you all a quick brief on the current fire conditions. So there's two fires in our area that have provided some smoke. A limited amount has come from the Sheridan fire, which is on the Prescott National Forest. And primarily the smoke, especially in the evening that settles down in here, is due to the saber fire on the Coconino National Forest that is just on the west side of where the slide fire stopped, so around Turkey Butte. But it's above the mouth of the drainages in West Fork, so at nighttime when that down canyon comes, it's been pulling the smoke down. I talked to one of their fire staff today. They're finishing out their burnout to secure the south end today. And then we could probably anticipate some more smoke conditions similar to what we've had the last couple nights again tonight, but then it should be improved because it's an old burn scar of what's called Taylor fire, a lot of dead and down. And so as it backs through there, it's going to consume those fuels, which is a positive thing, but it should do it with producing less smoke, unless these things continue to dry out from this abnormally dry weather. I think it is worth noting as well that we have an air quality monitor at Station 4. I've been watching it closely, and although we had some transient spikes in the late morning hours or late night hours, early morning, usually about midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning is when it's the worst. The 24-hour time-weighted average has stayed at 7 parts per million. And below 35 is considered healthy. So while it certainly impacts our views, I think they've done a good job managing those incidents. And these are lightning-caused fires, so these aren't deliberately set fires, but they've been being deliberate about their efforts to engage in those ignitions, to control the fire's perimeter, to not produce too much smoke at once. And I think it's paid off for us. Although I know it's still kind of a frustrating thing when you can't see the red rocks. So, yes, sir.
Just the fact that you mentioned earlier, we have the possibility of moisture coming in, depending on pressure factors and so on. So Thursday, you mentioned, I think.
Yeah, well, Thursday's starting to maybe a little bit of moisture seeping in. So, unfortunately, yeah, this monsoonal season has been aberrantly dry, but there is a depression. It may be a tropical storm now off Guatemala that if it gets sucked up here like some of the models are saying it will, that would help us. And that helps us a bunch with these fires, and it would just help us a bunch with moderating some of these temperatures, because today was an excessive heat warning, tomorrow's going to be excessive heat warning. We push that message out on Facebook, trying to get as many people aware of what actions to take. But yeah, it's certainly troubling when it's like this in August, and we should be past that time of year by now.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, Chief, again, if you'd thank those members who are responsible for all of the social media inputs and graphs and pictures and information, it's really helpful to a lot of people.
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, the other significant events, and here we are, some of our pictures. It's been such a strong source of input, if you will, on Facebook that like the parking that you're talking about up there, and it you know it makes it more difficult to get to where we need to get to, and we talked about the increase in calls, so I won't belabor that. Okay, man, I'm slacking. It says what we wear. That was from the last one. This is really about Tammy. We put I told you last month that Tammy was retiring, and we had a little banquet for her, and that was just some pictures of us. Get to say a few kind words about her, and putting in a stone out there on the patio for her. And I also wanted to mention that in our outreach, we have 70 applicants
Jesus.
for our GIS position.
Wow.
Yeah, super exciting. You know, when you look at, there was an article on CNN about how certain employers were reducing the stringency of their requirements for drug testing and pre-employment physicals and everything because it was so difficult to hire people. And just to see articles like that, and then to see that our agency was able to get 70 applicants, and some of them have impressive qualifications, in a field that is in high demand and across multiple different industries. And I think it's a strong testament to the organization that we have. So I was really excited about that. All right, told you about these guys. There's there's Taylor, sorry. Kyler's captain, I want to go on the record as saying he is not good at taking pictures. That's Jeff Wassel, and he could not provide me with a picture. All right, one of the other cool significant events is the crews from Station 1 had the opportunity to go spend some time with the Sunset Village residents and have dinner with them. And this is something that we do annually, and each time the crews come back from it, they have positive things to say about that, about their experience and about interfacing with the members of that community. So I want to take a moment to kind of highlight that. Some of the upcoming and recent events, Chili Cook-Off Award, due to the fact that we being Ed and Jody and not me, all I did was try to browbeat people into voting for us while I was there, made good chili, not the best chili, but got high enough marks that we received $300 in reward. Yeah, and so we talked about it, and we thought, you know what? The first thing was to split it amongst us. We figured that wasn't right. But what we could do is that we could give it to the Sedona Verde Valley Firefighters Charities. And so the money that we won is going directly from the Rotary Club to the charities, and this is a check that we'll give to the president of the charities. So yeah, pretty awesome. If we wouldn't have run out of chili, we'd have done better. A couple other items. August 22nd, 23rd, which is just Thursday and Friday, we have firefighter testing. As I said, we don't have any vacancies. We're off probation, but we always maintain a list. And so this is to reestablish that list. That'll be here. And then, of course, the transfer command ceremony. My boss will be here soon, and September 3rd, we will recognize that.
And Chief, that's at 2 o'clock.
I believe that's correct. 2
Yes,
o'clock?
2 o'clock.
Yep.
Here,
Yes.
here, at
Here.
Station 1.
Here at Station 1, 2 p.m.
And the general public's invited.
Yes.
So, Chief Mazulis may need to fill in some blanks here, but I'm going to do my best because he provided me with some excellent information. So, Sedona Fire District was awarded the premier EMS agency designation from Arizona Bureau of EMS and Trauma Systems, their premier EMS agency program. As you see up there, it says the goal of the PEEP is to further improve patient outcomes in Arizona through implementing evidence-based, highly coordinated, and standardized pre-hospital care. And since 2009, agencies that have interested in units had to have a commitment by the EMS leaders to use data to optimize patient care. need to submit all calls for review and do it through patient care reporting, and we had to implement findings into our policies and procedures. So, it's kind of a nice way of saying is you got to look at what you did, compare it to standards, see if you did it well, and whatever you didn't do well, you got to commit to changing, which sounds simple, but as some of us that have been in these systems before, that can be hard at times. And I think under Chief Mazulis's guidance, that we've done an excellent job of that. And the fact that we received that award is even more of a testament to how well our EMS providers and those that lead that effort to standardize our care, which I'll let Chief Mazulis talk about another piece of that care here in just a minute. What a good job they've done. So I won't read this big long thing, but I do want to say one thing is that on the bottom it says, attestation of committed and empowered quality assurance team that reviews 100% of incidents and patient contacts associated with the following time-sensitive emergencies. So we had to say that we were doing this. So from overdoses to cardiac arrest to MIs to strokes to major trauma and pediatric resuscitation, we review 100% of all of our calls, but we had to let them know and show them how we review 100% of those calls so we can make sure and make those improvements when needed and reinforce the right behavior as we continue to put up a crop of really strong paramedics. Chief Mazulis, do you have anything to add to that? All right. An item that I know is of interest to the board and I wanted to update you on is the Station 4 construction update. Construction may be not exactly the right term because we certainly are not to that phase yet, but what we're going to be doing in the next, the intent for the next month is that, matter of fact, I believe it's the 28th, I have a meeting with one of the potential contractors, Wilmeg, they build a lot of fire stations, and to go around the operational personnel and talk about what works and doesn't work about some of the designs of the different stations around here, be it Station 6, the new station, to Station 4, what they like, don't like, kind of get that pulse. And then there's 3 different architects that do a lot of stations in Arizona, and then with that input, and then the location of the station, what we're looking to do, see which one of those architects their signature is, and what aligns with that and what doesn't. And then the next step after that would be to identify an architect and a contractor to enter into a pre-construction agreement with. So after considering all the complexities of building on that Station 4 piece of ground with easements, everything that's been there before, how old the station is, doing the CM at risk, the construction manager at risk, where both the construction manager and the architect are engaged with us, the fire district, from the very beginning, and doing a pre-construction thing so we get to that 60% plan phase where we have a budget number, but where they've worked it out together so we don't get just an architect working on that or just that from the research I've done, since the board showed a definite interest in us moving forward with this and we allocated money, I've been doing a lot of research on this. That seemed to be the best approach. And so that's what's ongoing right now. And then, as you can see, that would be the rest of the steps. There's no timelines to that. Identify budget amounts and assess the need for trade-offs. So that would be if we say $5 million and then it's 5.5, what are we going to take out? I'm a little scared, honestly, about how busy construction is right now on what that's going to do to our cost, because there's high competition for all of the trades and the resources associated with that. But until we get to this point and do a good job of building the best plan possible, we won't really even have numbers to entertain. So
Maybe we'll have a recession and there'll be plenty of workers out there.
that could happen. There's some people that say it might.
Well, let's hope not,
Right,
for everybody else that lives.
right. And Chief Coyle, I just want to thank you. This has been you've been our interim chief, and still you've taken this on and are moving it forward, which has certainly been an expressed desire of the board and for the needs of the community too. So I just want to
Certainly.
thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad to do it.
But just a little, going back to the EMS accolade.
Yes, sir.
EMS is, people think of EMS, but it's the whole department.
It is the whole
Right from-
department.
Right from the support staff to the management and the people in the ground. it's all together. It has to work together, or you wouldn't have received those accolades. Because you're in competition with a lot of great departments.
Absolutely.
And to receive that, congratulations.
Thank you very much, and I agree with that, because it's not just about the care we provided, but it's a demonstration that our system is constantly working to improve that future care. And you're right, that takes everybody, and it's important. I mean, that's how we learn and we get better.
In terms of this recognition, how common is it to get this recognition?
It's not uncommon. It's a benchmarking piece, and like Chief Coyle said, the reason for it is it's us identifying that we look at what we do and have a desire to improve upon it. We just don't go by the new ambulance and say, okay, it's got 6 wheels, we're good. You know, is it good? You know, and is the equipment we're carrying and the things we're doing the right way? And what it did is it gave us a framework, because anecdotally, Chief Coyle could come to me and say, I want to do this because I read an article about it, or I went to a conference and saw some new thing for EMS. But this gave us some statewide recognized benchmarks to work towards, and beyond just what we're doing with the data management. And you know, this was the big reason why I went to the new software too, is so we could get in a position where we're more easily sharing data with the state to meet some of the requirements of this. And it opens the doors. Down the road, there's some other programs with the state, Treat and Refer, which is an alternative destination transport model, and you have to be a premier EMS agency to apply for that. If we were to do it, it helped me to work more fluidly with our local hospital and our medical director to determine, you know, he'll put out some protocols for a ST elevated MI heart attack, and this is our feedback to him. Well, this is how we're tracking the protocols that you've implemented to ensure we're following along. And in the past and across the state, a lot of times our EMS systems depended on the hospital and the physician to do all the data mining and to tell you the what for. And this is really our organization saying, no, we're going to look at what we do and continuously try to improve it. And it's simple. It's high-end 50,000 foot data stuff with computers and software, and it's on the low end, you know, the last sentence of the requirements references meeting pediatric standards, and us having an airway seat in the ambulance that the center folds out and turns into a car seat is just an extra thing we designed into our ambulances when we built them, so that we have that capacity. And so it's kind of a total systems approach to how we provide EMS service.
Well, it's very exciting to see that we've received this award, and I know you yourself have put a lot into having this happen, as well as everyone.
Yeah, our staff did an incredible job.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. So the next section is the purchase orders over $10,000. So at 3 of the last 4 board meetings, I talked to you about the Invisio software. First that we were looking at it, and then we demo, and then we're intending on going to it. It was in the budget as a specific items for the strategic planning. And so that purchase was made. And you know, it's almost like I paid Ed for that lead in about complexity and systems. But you know, I spent a lot of time this morning trying to kind of struggle on the best way to frame this, because strategic plans, anybody that's done them before has an idea of what a strategic plan is. And I would submit that most people historically have a strategic plan that was done, and then it went on a shelf, and then sometime before the next strategic plan was done, it was like, oh boy, time to go do our strategic planning. But it was like, check the box. And we've certainly been there. And so, but what, you know, I wanted to do, and what Carrie prompted me to do, because she was the one looking at the information and making it apparent that what we're reporting wasn't really giving the board meaningful data to make that 50,000 feet kind of decision, is we need to find a different way to do this. And so this Invisio, I'll just, in some terms, what I thought, this is kind of how I thought I could summarize it, but it allows for us to take a more complex and deeper analysis required to find lasting solutions to our long-term problems. So instead of looking at things as a simple cause and effect, We look at all the different pieces and how they interplay. And until we start measuring them over time, just like we're doing for the call volume at Station 5, or as we do on somebody's, the number of reports that they are able to get billed out, or any other item that we do, until we start looking at it over time and measure it against external standards and have something to benchmark against, it's hard to say how good we really are. Until we have a premier EMS thing to measure our EMS against, it's hard for us to do that. So it allows for that. And then it allows for those feedback loops. So we can start to look at that information and we say, hey, you know what, this is the way this looks like it's going. So how can we introduce a change? I think when it comes to pediatric stuff, on one of the items that Ed's going to talk about, he can demonstrate how we introduced a change into how we do our pediatric kits that normalized them and made them more effective for providing good patient care. And then the last thing that this strategic planning thing, I think the big thing that let's do is we focus on the relationships between the people, not just the parts. The example I heard was if you're going to make an omelet, you could give somebody a list of everything that's in an omelet. So here you go, here's an omelet. But that's not really, that's not how you make an omelet. The part that you need to know is how you put all those pieces together and how they interplay with each other, the fire and the egg and whatever else. Maybe not a good example, but anyways, that's kind of where I'm going to anchor into that one and move on. So, and it also allows to create, especially allow the board to conduct a broader assessment of the system we work in and see how the different components are influencing everything. If we say that this is the priority for this year, and then we get distracted by this shiny thing because it just came up, and then we do not stay focused on that priority, if that's a priority that the board set, if that's a priority that we set in our budget, and then there needs to be a way to reflect that. That can't just be something, oh yeah, we did our strategic plan, check. It's got to have meaning. And so this will allow it to have meaning. There's experts that are there to help us with this, and they have been great guidance so far as we're looking at working on getting some of the training rolled out. When are we working on getting the first level of training rolled out? The 28th, 29th of August. So, because no one has 19 goals. No Fortune 500 company has 19 goals in their strategic plan. And I was part of making those 19 goals. So, and I've read a lot about why 19 goals is a hard thing to attain in a year. So, but we're starting with those 19 goals because that's what the board adopted at that time. And then working together, we're going to see how we can refine those and move those forward. And then there'll be feedback with the board. Hey, is this on track? Is this on track? And then we'll still have those meetings after we get the system up and running. But then we'll have goals and measurables. So when you look at that budget and those front pages in each budget section that says that here's our performance indicators, those won't just be performance indicators that are stated and then left out there for to never be evaluated against. You'll see those performance indicators. You'll be able to access those online, and you'll be able to see how we benchmark against them. Monthly we'll give you reports, and I started this whole thing with thinking that, wow, that's a cool dashboard, and it really is. I'll show you on the next page. That's the kind of dashboard that we'll be able to give you on the different action items. And so what that, there'll be much more. There'll be training for all the board members as well, but you can see the status of all the different projects. You can see the subordinate actions. You can see how they all roll up and the progress toward them. You know who, it's called the owner, but who's responsible for them, who's contributing to those. And so, the strategic plan and the different components of it became such an integral part of the chief's assessment tool that was developed. I felt like one of the other things we need to do is really make sure that there's a good way to measure that, and so that the chief was set up for success and had a process that allowed that information to be communicated more effectively. And so that's the direction. And I just wanted to share that with you. It's consistent with what we talked about in the last few board meetings, but as we move forward, and especially now that we spent the money, I wanted to make sure it was clear to the board as to the why.
Thank you, Chief.
That's outstanding, Chief.
Yeah.
I really applaud you and your whole team on getting that set up and organized, because I'd love to see everything as it progresses, so I thank you for that.
I appreciate that, Joy. All right, there's two other purchases. One is a BAC that we'll talk about when we get to that agenda item later on for the purchase of vehicles. And then, Chief Mazulis, would you take a moment and explain what hand TV is?
Yes. So we purchased the hand TV's pediatric response system, and to quickly back up, For many years, Sedona Fires utilized the Broslo tape and a Broslo system. And what it is, for those that haven't been in medicine, is it's a laminated card. And if you have a pediatric emergency, you lay the card next to the child, and based on their length, it estimates the dosing for drugs and the size of tubes you use for their throat and things like that. And while it's a great system and it still has great efficacy, the bags that we currently have on our apparatus were the ones I trained on and Chief Coyle trained on when we were hired. And so a lot of the zippers are blown out, and the plastic's faded and there's rips and tears. And so we were looking at to replace those bags, and the cost is significant because it's a trademarked product line. And then through an EMS conference and some other trainings our guys went to, they came back and told me about this system. So we started looking into it. And what it is it's hand TV, and it was developed by a doctor named Dr. Ann TV, who's a pediatric emergency doc. And through his research, and there's a ton of research and peer-reviewed stuff on his product, and he does and developed a system that's based on age-based calculations for kids, age and ideal body weight versus the length of the kid. Right. And all of the data shows that they're both equally as good. And the other driver for him is he found that 34% of pediatric specialist hospitals, of the pediatric specialist hospitals, 34% gave the wrong drug, the wrong dose to the wrong kid at the wrong time. And so he said to himself, what is happening out in the field with paramedics that see 2 kids a year that aren't a peds specialist hospital? So that was kind of the impetus for him building his product. So back to the PO, of the 12,000, about 6,000 of it was for new bags and all of the stuff that goes in them for all of our apparatus. So that's 13 bags. And this will be fairly interesting, but it's compartmentalized, and then all the bags are labeled. All the bags are labeled specific to the kids, and of course the company comes with, this is how you should stock your bag, type of thing. And this is the hardware with the system. And if you get there and you dispatch to a 1-year-old, you pull out the 1-year-old, and it's got all the appropriate tubes and sizes for that kid. So that's the hardware for it. And then the rest of the purchase was for a book that you flip to 1-year-old, and it says this size ET tube, this is the dose of epinephrine the kid gets, this is the dose of this, and this is how much electricity you shock their heart with. And there's a hard cover book for each apparatus. And then the rest of the costs are also for the software implementation, and that's the part that got me beyond all the equipment. So we have 85 subscriptions, if you will, to their app, and all of our apparatus have a phone in them for mapping and for patching to the hospital and things like that. And then we've got our EMS tablet for documenting our call for EMS billing. So all those devices will have the Hand TV app loaded on it, and then we got enough. They give you enough licenses with the purchase. There wasn't a cost difference if we only equipped our apparatus. We'll have enough extras so our medics can have it on their personal phone, which some people just are comfortable with it. But a brief overview is you just tap the app, and then you add a patient, and say, for example, we're dispatched to an 8-year-old, and you tap on what drugs you're giving them, and then you just give it right there. And we usually have a charge medic on calls like this that'll manage this system. And you can go to the equipment, it tells you what size tubes they need, electricity and so forth, and what vitals signs that child should represent, and it goes through all that. It's fairly interesting. It's an electronic book, right? The cool part is, one, it'll manage all of our pediatric emergencies, but they've also built this for adult cardiac arrest. So you have that quick deal. And the thing that finally sealed the fate of this program for our organization is the fact that when the medic's done just tapping buttons like I just did, they hit export, and then on our EPCR, they hit a button that says import, and it auto-populates all of their EMS charting. There's no double entry of data. where you can have mistakes with data entry and things like that. And it seamlessly operates with all of our current software. So there was nothing to buy to make it work. And so, I could bore you with the specifics of the details, but if you go to the Hand TV website, there are dozens of articles where the folks that have implemented this program have case reviewed the improvement to their EMS services. And I just think not that we have a lot of pediatric emergencies, and was even more of a reason why I wanted to get a cleaner system, because we have so few of them. It's so extra out of the ordinary that every tool we have. And as stated, that previous system we were utilizing was here when Chief Quell and I got here. So we were looking for an update, and this one fit our needs. So
And the,
Quick question.
yes.
Hey, so just in regards to, pediatric sizes and so forth, age, now, let's say there's a 1-year-old, but they're the size of, let's say, an 18-month-year-old, or do they have, weight as well as age?
So hand TV is based on age and ideal body weight. And
Okay.
there may be the anatomy is the same. Even if you got a little chubby kid, the airway is still the same diameters at different ages. And then in addition to that, there's only a couple drugs we carry that are oil based, which then is impacted by adipose tissue. The rest of our drugs, the epinephrines, the big ones that save life, work on the muscle. So it doesn't matter how chubby the little guy or girl is. It'll work.
that was well stated, Ed.
I wasn't thinking so much chubby, I was just thinking some of the kids these days they're getting so big at those younger age, muscle mass and so forth. But yeah, there's some cute chubbies out there.
And the way it's explained is how do I, so the drug dosing that we utilize pre-hospital is, well, any drug dosing that's utilized, it's best guess, sometimes. And, like a drug like Narcan, a lot of people are familiar with it's in the news. You give somebody that's had an overdose to heroin 4 milligrams and they jump up and they're ready to run a marathon. And sometimes they need 8. And so it's the dosing in here is recommended based on science and research. And our protocols that have been developed with Northern Arizona Healthcare allow us the flexibility to modify those dosing as needed.
Chief, if you would not mind, after the meeting, if I'm interested enough to do my own research on this and study and so on, just out of personal curiosity.
I understand, because I nerded out too, and I will send you the link.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's,
If I could just say, this is an excellent example of why it's so helpful to talk about something that
Right.
cost over 10,000, because we get educated, the public gets educated about the precision that is going on here. That's really incredible, and like you say, with not treating very many pediatric patients in a year, this is a very important tool.
that's harder.
Very
Yeah.
important tool, because it means that there's less experience doing this. So you have guidelines that can help you do it right.
And as a sidebar, I was the first one to use it in the field because I was helping up at Station 5 the other day, and we had a kid fall at Slide Rock, so. I was pretty
This
stoked.
also brought to mind something that Gina and I talked about last year, and that is that innovation is taking place all the time in technology that affects the ability to save lives. And this is a good example of how the ability to know that there are new pieces of equipment or technologies but the fire district's ability to incorporate those as soon as possible so that we get the benefit of that technology. That's a good example of what we ran on.
Yeah.
One, and I think it's noteworthy as well that we were introduced to and did the research on this product 2 years ago, and initial exposure, and then we took time to ferret out and talk to other agencies that use it, and really, I failed to mention earlier. Some of our medics were so passionate about this, and they were pushing me, and I was trying to get out of my ESO brain of implementing that and everything else. And then it is noteworthy to mention that we ended up getting a grant to get the hand TV training up here in the Verde Valley, and every agency in the Verde Valley has gone to this program. So it's you know, we had kind of some movers and shakers at each organization, and so we are not the last to go live with it, but we're right on par. We're all going live with it, and it's been proven beneficial valley-wide.
So it's a valley-wide tool program asset to our
Yeah,
fleet.
so much so we convinced our medical director to change our recertification requirements, because hand TV also offers a coursework biannually that covers the coursework that PALS covers, and we got our doc to sign off on us doing the hand TV recertification versus PALS. So everybody's bought in.
For the public, when I have you, PALS means Pediatric Advanced Life Support.
I apologize. You are correct. It's the required class to maintain your ability to respond to pediatric advanced life support emergencies, and Hand TV's sister program does what PALS does, and it uses our equipment, so you're practicing with the equipment you use in the field.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Chief Mazulis. Yeah, there's two other points about this system that when I was kind of challenging Ed on whether it was a good idea or not. And one was, I said, what's the transfer training and how long does that take, to become proficient in it? Because like you said, we've done that other one. And after he demonstrated the kit and how it is very intuitive, and so I didn't have any concerns about that. And the other one I thought about was, because we don't do it very often, right? The cost of replacing the equipment, because we used to have to buy, we buy the small endotracheal tubes by the 12s, and we maybe need 2 of them to put the sizes, and then we need 2 of them. And then when Chief Mazulis told me that, no, these people will sell a kit. So when things are getting near expiration, you can buy just the guts of that kit, but just the number you need. And so you can run them all the way up to their near expiration date and then get them replaced. And so I think over time, there's also going to be that additional cost savings, because we won't be buying 12 of something that we only need 2 of for endotracheal tubes. So I think it was a good purchase. So if it is all right at the board, then I'll just, since we have a BAC to talk about the Ford purchase, then I'll leave that until we get there and move on. All right, the little update on the social media, 175 new page likes. Reach was 50,000 and new followers 206. The most engagement we received was from a post regarding the busy weekend in Oak Creek Canyon, Slide Rock. 27,848 people. It's that time of year. Our key messages we stayed focused on were the same as last month, which was the impact of that illegal parking on our response, environmental exposures, and preparedness, which you'll see some great graphics that Chief Lukowski put up on the Facebook page yesterday and today. And then our wildland fire and evacuation preparedness, and keeping people aware of what is contributing to some of the smoke conditions and stuff outside. I'm going to deviate slightly from protocol and tell everybody thank you. It's been only 8 months, but I know that everybody here, from the board to everybody here, has either received a late night phone call from me or some urgent task to do at the last minute. And most significantly, I have to say thanks to my wife Christy, because there's only some certain places where you can make up bandwidth when you're wearing 2 hats like that, and one of them was at home, and so she was very tolerant of that and helpful. So I just want to say thank you to the board for the trust that you placed in me, and thank you and everybody else for the assistance. All right, that's the end of my chief's report.
Well, thank you, Chief, and again, thank you for the job that you've done, and our thanks to Christy also for her patience with us in borrowing you when we did over the weekends. So
I'll pass
thank you.
that on.
Okay, with that said, we have next item on the agenda is discussion, possible action, purchase order number 9119 for the amount of $273,972.33 to Sanderson Ford for the purchase of fleet vehicles. And this is presented by Division Chief Ed Mazulis.
So, no, I'm gonna let Ed talk about it, because he just got back from the fleet management. But there's been some input and stuff that I've received from members of the board asking some questions about leases and lease purchases versus outright purchases. So I am confident that when it comes to the medium duty vehicle, because of how long we're going to have it, that a lease purchase and how specialized that is, it is not a good alternative, a lease or a lease purchase. I am less confident than that. So I think after Ed, if he could explain, the vehicles that we intend to purchase, if there's a desire for the board to receive additional information on any part of this purchase order on different alternatives, I'm not prepared to provide that right now, but I would be happy to work with Chief Mazulis to provide that in the future if that's something that the board desires. So Ed, if you could brief them on the different apparatus, and then we'll go or the different equipment, we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the board action in front of you reflects the desire to purchase a fleet maintenance vehicle. Currently, our mechanic is in a utility bed pickup truck, and with our fleet growing in size, not necessarily in numbers, some of our vehicles are difficult to maintain in our current apparatus mechanic shop. So having a mobile shop, if you will, with a boom crane and the welder and associated equipment will afford him the opportunity to do a lot of the work he does a lot much easier, because he'll be able to do it at the different facilities. He can take the fleet truck out to Station 3 and replace a brake drum and roll the cab and do motor work, and he'll have the boom crane to do that. It'll give us a capacity we don't have now to do roadside maintenance on emergency scenes. Recently, we had a low air issue in a tire at one of our canyon engines up at the top of the canyon, and we didn't have a compressor within our inventory to fill the tire, put air in that tire. So we had to contract that service out to put air in a tire because we didn't have a compressor mobile with that capacity. It'll give him that opportunity. In addition to that, fueling remotely, and there's a potential for us to bring some of the stuff that we have to farm out and the services we have to farm out back in-house a little bit. And that'll be dependent on workload and everything else. But if you saw in the training report, Jody and our volunteer Lance and Mike went to the fleet management training. I was able to attend it last week to get the basics down. And a lot of the stuff that we're doing, I think, will be improved with having the service truck, because it'll allow for more ease of operation and navigating the district for our mechanic to complete preventative maintenance projects around the district, and not wait for things to break to get them in the shop. So that's the first vehicle we're requesting. Secondary to that is a scheduled replacement per the capital improvement plan of some command and prevention, our community risk reduction vehicles. They're currently in SUVs, and most of those vehicles are between 12 and 15 years old. And the reason for a pickup style vehicle is it's added utility throughout the district in different capacities. It gets the equipment that they carry for fire inspection and things like that out of the cab that they live in and bake it in the hot sun. You can't wash all the stuff off those things, and gives us more utility. And most importantly, something I realized from getting some education last week in this class is it further standardizes our light and medium duty fleet. And so we have one type of air filter and fuel filter and parts for a certain type of vehicle, as the BC's current vehicle, Chief Coyle's vehicle, and our other auxiliary fleet vehicles are all F-150 trucks. My concern about leasing any of those vehicles is they come in here and get stickers, and then Mike does a decent amount of cutting on them, running wires and putting lights on and things like that. So with a vehicle that can also serve in a command vehicle function, we do quite a bit of modifications to them to make them command vehicle ready to meet NFPA standards with the proper lighting and then the radios and things like that. And then lastly, on that purchase order request is for a mobile IT vehicle, and it'd be a little van. Currently, our IT guy's in a pickup, and he loads what he thinks he needs for the day, and inevitably he gets to Station 3 and the programming didn't go right, so he's got to go back to Station 8 to reprogram and then bring it back. And having this mobile van utility will give him the space to have what he needs to program devices in the field, and akin to the mobile fleet maintenance platform. This will be a mobile IT platform, and if you haven't noticed when you drive around town, anybody that says Geek Squad or any other company that manages internet technologies is in one of these little type bands. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we thought we might copy what the industry does, and it'll give Jeremy the opportunity to remotely program and do a lot of his install and IT work. And in addition to that, as you know, with busy times of the year, for him to navigate from station 8 to station 3 and then have to pop back to 8 and then back to 3 to install a computer or a new software program, that burned up 3/4 of his day, which could have taken an hour and a half. So we're at the point, I feel, that we can drill down and really look at time and efficiencies with how we use our time, and apparatus like these described will further allow us to recognize the savings of time, which in our business and in any business, time always equals a savings in money over the long run. And lastly, the van type vehicle will require minor modifications to get it to where it's a mobile IT rig. I hadn't explored a lease purchasing option. I don't have any information on what the cost difference would be on that. Those types of vehicles, they last a while, and so I don't see a negative aspect to a purchase. But then again, I haven't explored lease purchase and those, or just straight leasing it. But in my opinion, based on what I know about our fleet needs, the work we do to get those command vehicles ready, and then obviously a shop specific truck, it's difficult to lease those because we actually have to build that apparatus because they put the box on a chassis and do that, similar in some ways to how we do our ambulance construction. So
And this has all been in our capital plan, correct, in our budget?
yes, this is actually it's multiple generations, and it's been modified based on our changing environment and opportunity. But this plan we're working with is been on the books for a couple of years, a few years.
So all these purchases here are reflected in this fiscal year of our current 11-year capital plan. And it was purposeful to bias these vehicle purchases towards this year that were either for this year or next year, for the ones that had already exceeded. I forgot what the term that Lance used, because I want to, let's say, return on investment, but that's not it. But it's the cost per mile. But it was pretty easy for him to look generally at different light duty vehicles and see where the cost of maintaining them and everything began to increase more significantly than any of the savings that you enjoyed from not purchasing a new vehicle. And all of the vehicles that these will be replacing have passed that breakover point, and they are in this year's capital.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief, thank you for your presentation.
Yes.
I have no doubt these vehicles are needed in the fleet. I've got no doubt that the vehicles requested are needed in the fleet, especially the mobile mechanic apparatus. As it relates to that vehicle in particular, because of just the sheer weight of the parts that we replace off a heavy apparatus, the ability to have a boom of sorts to lift and load without using your back, thereby increasing the safety margin, is something well needed. So I fully agree with you on that, as well as the other apparatus. What I need to look at and need more information on based on this is the fact that how we pay for these things. Although it is in the budget, and although there may be down the road monies that would go back into the capital improvement plan or what have you for money that we receive from them, the fact is that it's almost more commonplace nowadays across the country that we lease, in that we are able to maintain a younger fleet by turning them in at certain designated times, allowing us to have newer vehicles with fewer things that can go wrong, thereby decreasing our need to have an inventory of parts. With the fleet, as you stated, increasing, we still only have one mechanic, so our ability to stay on top of maintenance have, if we purchase these after the 5th, 6th, 7th year, impacts Mike's ability to do his job. So I would like more information as far as the advantages of not only the purchase, but as it relates to a lease or a lease purchase, so that we can make a decision based on the data that you've provided to us that may, in fact, include finance, and make a decision based on that. That's just my opinion, and just one of the 5 board members here. I'd like to hear from the rest of the board members on what their thoughts are. Okay.
Dave, I was wondering, are you requesting specifically a cost analysis for purchase as opposed to lease purchase, or is that what you want to look at?
A cost analysis of all 3.
Okay, gotcha.
Purchase versus lease, purchase versus lease. Yeah.
I agree, 'cause I was gonna request that, so.
Question, are any of the other vehicles currently leased? Or are they owned by the district?
No.
None of the vehicles scheduled for replacement are currently leased.
None of our vehicles are currently leased.
Another focus on that is, it is across the country, across the state, leaning in towards best business practices in that we lease. It's been brought up before, and I think this is a perfect opportunity with an inventory as large or as small, based on your point of view, that we have before us, that we could lead into that for future purchases or leases, and have it predicated based on these 4 items. And I say 4 because I think with the utility vehicle, the F-550, because it is a diesel, because its life is in the 15 to 20 to 25 year bracket, a purchase outright is something I think we could look at to do right off the bat. But it's the other ones, the F-150s and the minivan, that we're looking at to get into a purchase, a lease, excuse me, 4. So that's my point.
If I might jump in here, I agree, the 550 is something we should move forward on right now. However, time is not of the essence on the remaining vehicles. A month won't hurt anything or more for a valid study of the value of purchasing or leasing light trucks for fire service. I took the liberty, what have you, because I've been doing some of my own thoughts and so on with regard to this. And perhaps the chiefs know of this gentleman. His name is Gary Ludwig. I've reached out to ask him for some input, at least not from him personally, from other departments who have chosen this path. So when I get the information, if I get that information, I'll just pass it on to the chief. But I concur. I think we should move forward with the 550 and do an analysis on lease purchase.
Can I ask one question? If you lease a vehicle, alter it because you need to for the lights and wiring, how do you return that vehicle?
So,
I don't know.
yeah, if, Al, we can't answer your questions well, because we just, I talked about this a little bit right before the meeting, and I frankly don't know that. And I think there is a difference between what a command vehicle, the upfitting that goes into a command vehicle versus the other one. And, if it pleases the board to have us provide you with a more deliberate assessment of those 3 alternatives, and for vehicles that are modified for use and vehicles that are just used almost, as bought, I think we can make that happen.
Well, and as a point of reference, and included in capital, this purchase order is specific to the rolling stock, the vehicle. For one command vehicle, to upfit it, we install upwards of $8,000 worth of equipment. And so I don't know the answer to your question. When you remove that equipment and you leave all the holes and dangling wires, like how do you
You're
return
gonna
it?
end
We'll
up
have to
buying
lease
it anyway, so it's really just deferred purchase.
And again, I can't speak intelligently to what's the better option, because I don't know how that works. I'd have to explore it, because I don't know what you do when you unplug everything and then have them the vehicle that you
But
drill holes
we
in.
can find out.
And the other concern as these options are being talked about, and you mentioned, Chair, that you would like three explored. The one that I'm concerned about what I'm hearing, that are we using time exploring something that we actually can't return, that we don't have an option? My other concern is generally with leases, they care about how many miles you put on the vehicle. And we have an unusual district in that we need to cover a lot of miles, whereas other people who lease perhaps in an urban center don't really have that issue. So that's another concern I have. And then finally, I hate to pay interest, and I realize I do. I don't like to pay interest unless I have to. And if we get into, I'm not talking about the lease, but the third option that you'd like explored, that involves paying interest. And when we have the money, I'd say let's buy it and not be saddled with extra cost of interest. So I frankly am concerned about how much we're going to be asking staff to do that doesn't look like we're going to get real worthy answers about.
Well, I agree with the points that you've made. I think though, but for us to make a responsible decision for vehicles in this amount for the length of time that we may be using them, it is behoove us to base that decision on data that is provided by staff, so that we can make that decision, so that when we spend the taxpayers' money, we're spending it in the best way we possibly can. So as far as the purchase order in front of us, because it is written as a whole, I don't know that we can break that up in part or just wait 1 month to come back and look at it then.
Mr. Whittington, are they able to approve the purchase of one vehicle?
And the amount,
The agenda item is real clear. You're voting on 273, 972, 33 for amount.
Got it.
You can't split it up. It's not worded that way.
Okay, thank you.
And since, it'd be nice to know where we all stand on this before we postpone this for another month. If there's 3 of us that would like to move forward now, we might be able to. I don't know where we stand after I having spoken about my concerns.
Well, I'll put in my 2 cents real quick. I believe, I agree with the chair in regards to doing our due diligence, with the cost analysis. So, that's me.
Okay, with that said, it sounds like there would be, Joy would be in favor of a cost analysis. I would be in favor of cost analysis. Gene would be in favor of a cost analysis.
So, Mr. Chair, can we table this until next meeting and we can provide you the cost analysis?
That would be my suggestion. At this point, we'll take this off the agenda, tabled until next month.
May I, for a point of clarity, you want as described, a purchase, and then you want to look at lease purchase, and then you wanted to look at
Straight out lease.
straight out lease.
And with that is not just the numbers for that acquisition,
No, we'll look at total life cycle costs.
total life cycle costs. Yes,
And
sir.
is there a price advantage of buying it outright versus the lease with the vendor?
That would be the purchase.
Yep, we will assess those 3 alternatives for command vehicles that require significant retrofitting, and then other light-duty vehicles that do not, and we'll present the board with those at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll word our purchase order different, in case we need to break it up.
Well, there was a couple things missing on there too.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the discussion, possible action, review, and approval of lease amendment with AT&T for Station 4 generator access. Chief Coyle.
So, members of the board, what I would like to do on this is instead of us moving forward with this, the approval of this, AT&T has been very responsive to our questions, but there's still a few other loose ends that I need to clear up with the advice of legal counsel. And so what I would like to do is table this until next month, and then myself and Mr. Whittington and Mr. Moats will meet with AT&T and finalize some of those things that we've identified. It's, the largest concern is that whatever modifications we do to this, that they do not in any way impact our ability to build the best possible station at that location for Station 4. And so while AT&T has been very helpful, there's still some areas there that need to be cleared up.
Okay, thank you. We'll table that till next month. Next item on the agenda is discussion, possible action, review, and approval of lease amendment for Verizon, formerly Southwest Co. /ATEL at Fire Station 3. Chief Coyle.
Yeah, so I apologize. I don't remember how many meetings ago it was, but we had come to you and Mr. Whittington and spoke also about in our previous lease agreement, there was language that allowed us to advise Verizon that if there's some impact on our primary mission by their equipment being there, that we would give them a year's notice for them to vacate either our tower or one of their sites. In conversations with Verizon, the language that was proposed by Mr. Whittington and his staff included that year, and there was verbal agreement to that. However, in the final version of the contract that I got back from Verizon, that language was pulled. So, assuming that it is still the board's wish, and it is most certainly my wish, that we have that opportunity to extract ourselves from that agreement if there's something with us entering into that partnership that is affecting our ability to deliver our primary mission, then I would like to also table this, and I'm going to ask Mr. Whittington to go direct with his member or his counterpart at Verizon and get that corrected back to the language that they had verbally agreed upon, and then we can move forward. It's a little bit frustrating, frankly, but.
Understood. So that's, we'll go ahead and table that until next month. Correct.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the board member items, which is discussion, possible action, annual review, and update of the fire board handbook. I'll open that up to anybody who's got input on that. After reviewing the handbook, there was 2 policies in there that I would like to review, and they both have to do with the fire chief evaluation. One states that he will be or she will be evaluated annually, and the other policy directive states that, how they will be evaluated with the evaluation form. Essentially, they're saying the same thing. I would ask that we could combine those 2 into one policy. That yes, you will receive an annual evaluation in this format.
And I think the board that in the contract that you entered into with the fire chief, it spells out that, and I would imagine, I'm sure Mr. Woods can say it better, but that we should probably have it where that the expectation in the handbook is consistent with the expectation that was set forth in his employment agreement.
Yeah, I would think so. Bill, do you have a comment on that?
No, he's right. It should be, and if it's inconsistent, it needs to be fixed.
Okay, so I would suggest to the board that policy reflect as it's stated in the contract, so that they kind of follow each other. Is that kind of like we're saying, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. With that said, I didn't see any other items at this point in time that we would want to modify or change.
I didn't find it.
No. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I reviewed this after you and I spoke about it, and identified 4 or 5 things that
Okay.
need to be modified to, I'm sorry. I reviewed this document after you and I spoke, and I identified 4 or 5 things that need to be modified to come into compliance with state law.
Okay.
I've made those modifications, and if you don't mind, I'll just redline them and send them over to the chief when he wants them.
Okay. With that said, Bill, thank you very much. With that said, is there a motion needed or required to modify to come into compliance with state law?
Yes, I'd recommend that you simply authorize legal counsel to submit recommended changes to fire chief for integration into the current form.
Okay, so moved on that.
Second.
Do I have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that will, handbook will be made with those, would be adjusted with those revisions. With that said, we have our next item, which is the fire marshal's safety message. Do we have anyone, Chief?
So our fire marshal is still recovering from his on-duty injury, so he is not here today. But he is doing well. And the safety message that he had asked to deliver today was that to ensure that you avoid any slippery surfaces and you have an exit strategy whenever you're working around high-pressure water lines. Because without knowing which direction you go, if you're faced with a hazard and an immediate concern, you may not necessarily react as well as you would if you had tried to anticipate what potential outcomes could occur.
Okay.
That is the end of the safety message.
Well, thank you very much, and as well to all staff for their preparation for this meeting. I truly appreciate it, and with that said, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you, Joy.